Chapter 6, number 7, Hilchos Deios. Haroach haveru shechoto. One who sees his fellow who sins, or sholach b'derech lo tovo, or he's going in a bad direction. His behavior is not acceptable. Mitzvah lachzir lemutav. There's a mitzvah to try to bring him back on the proper path. To speak to him, do whatever you can to bring him back. Lo diu shu chote al atzmo b'masav haroim, and explain to him that ultimately he's actually victimizing himself. People say, mind your own business. Person goes and does something which is abusive to his own health. And he's enjoying it. He doesn't realize, and you inform him, by the way, you realize you continue going in this direction, in 3 months, you're going to have a cardiac arrest. So if the person's a fool, he's going to ignore you. But if he understands you're sincere and you know what you're saying, he'll appreciate that you're advising him to change his behavior. So when you explain to him, you say to him that he's victimizing himself by sinning and doing the wrong thing. He's the victim. You should inform your fellow when he's doing the wrong thing. Whether you inform him, admonish him, inform him, whether it's things which are between man and fellow man, or it's between him and God, regardless. You have to speak to him privately. You don't do it publicly. You're not there to embarrass him. You're there really to turn him around, that he should appreciate that your interest is in him, and you don't want there should be bad vibes or bad results, or you don't want him to be hurt. If in fact you embarrass him, so what are you accomplishing? If you really want to be helpful and constructive and productive with me, why are you hurting me? Why are you embarrassing me? Therefore, it should be done privately. It should not be done public. You speak to him slowly, and in a soft-spoken manner, to indicate the feeling of why you're doing it. And you're more specific. And what I'm telling you now is only because it's in your best interest. He should be able to merit a share in the world to come. So let's talk. You have a person doesn't know about God, doesn't know about the world to come, doesn't even believe in the world to come. Where do you start with that person? You tell him you shouldn't violate Shabbos. You should keep dietary laws. There are more fundamental things you have to discuss with that person. And you're not going there to hit him over the head. It doesn't even have realms to the word of admonishment. You're coming to really educate him and explain to him that there's certain things which are integral to his existence, which he's unaware of. That's what you're teaching. You're not teaching about the details. The details at this point are unimportant. They're superfluous. You're talking to the wrong party. He has no relevance. He has no capacity to appreciate what you're saying to him. So the first question you ask him is, do you believe in God? Because of course you believe in God. So the question is, you ask him, and how exactly does your belief in God manifest itself? A basic question. He says, well, because I try to do what God wants me to do. And what does God want you to do? To be a good person. And what does it mean to be a good person? That I shouldn't break the law. I'll tell you, living in a country where they enforce the law, their laws, even if you don't believe in God, if you want to be a good citizen or a good human being, you keep the law. It has nothing to do with believing in God. So how does believing in God manifest itself for you to behave and to conduct yourself respectfully and properly? Evidently, it has something to do with God. That has nothing to do with God. You live in the United States at one time where laws were enforced and people were taught to behave civilly. You behave civilly, whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God. You don't steal, you don't hurt, you don't kill. All that has nothing to do with believing in God. So evidently, believing God means more than just abiding by the law. It needs more than that. What is it? And why do you believe in God? That's a good question. Why do you say, why do you believe in God? Has God ever spoken to you? So now you're getting into an area which is very crucial to bring the person to certain levels of realization. Well, you realize this world couldn't have come about unless somebody of God's dimension brought it into existence. Otherwise, how did existence come about? I'm just giving the back and forth, the dialogue I would have with a person. And the human body, even according to science, the human body, the more we understand, the less we understand how intricate it is and how it's the level of genius that goes into the human body, the function, and how it all works. Each part of the body complements the other, the brain, the nervous system, the circulatory system, all the various systems in the body. The more educated you are, the more amazed you are. This could have only been brought about through a divine being. Anything less than that, not. And we live only because of that. Because the world should have come to an end, and there's a certain rotation of the earth. And if the sun would be closer than it is, the world would be would be vaporized. And if it would be too far, we would freeze. Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. The precision in existence, it's not to be believed. The balance in the body, the chemistry of the body. If it's off a little, the person has a chemical imbalance. The balance has to be exactly right. How did this happen? Evidently, that God who I believe in brought this all about, because only he's able to maintain this balance and this exactness and this level of beyond human capacity, beyond any capacity, to be able to coalesce all these various systems and will the systems, otherwise they wouldn't exist. And this I've mentioned in the past, and they spoke about it recently. When they sent up the Hubble telescope to space, and the first images that came back, it photographed 2 million miles of space dust. Space dust. But it's beyond that. We can't even relate to what 2 million miles are. They said if a person would count 1 million single dollar bills, I don't know how many years it would take. We're talking about 2 million miles of space dust. And yet, the universe goes beyond that. How many stars are there? How many galaxies are there? And they keep discovering new galaxies, new things. The more advanced we become. It seems to be it borders on the infinite, although it's not infinite. How did all this come about? This is random. It only makes sense if there's a divine being who was able to bring all this about. So you touch the person in the way, but not everybody's really interested in this kind of discussion. Person, I got bowling tonight, I have tennis. I don't have time to about these things. Start thinking about this, I'm gonna miss the next shot. I'm not gonna be able to go out with the boys. They don't talk about this kind of subject matter. No, they're all high school graduates. They don't talk, they never went to university. They never took philosophy. They never went to divinity school. That's for divinity school students. Well, that's not what we are. Look, you can only try. You try, doesn't work, doesn't work. But if you could make a difference, you're supposed to make a difference. If has the background, you have to reacquaint him with his background to appreciate what the downside is, what the upside is of doing the right thing. The person who doesn't understand what's up and what's down, you have to explain to him that he has a soul. Many people believe they're what? They're intellectual animals. They don't believe in an afterlife. Just as the animal dies, the human being dies, it's over. And you can address that also. So why do you eulogize a person when he dies? Why is there burial? Why do people spend fortunes? If it's no different than just flesh and bones, and it's just a cadaver because it happened to be a human being. Why are you giving it all this attention? Unless it has relevance to what? To the spiritual. Even after death, it has relevance to the spiritual. Of course, the body was a receptacle for the spiritual, and there is an afterlife, and there is a connection. That's why you treat the body with this very special level of respect, even after death. Go to the story. Many years ago, I told the story in the past. I was in Israel in the summer, and I was there together with Ira Rennert and his son, because we used to have a learning program for 2 weeks in the summer. In Israel, we had about 20 people would go. Norman Maggid and his wife would arrange the traveling and all the accommodations and the hotels, and we'd spend 2 weeks in Israel. The married people come with their families. We would study. We'd have class in the hotel for a few hours in the morning. The rest of the day we would tour. And we'd eat together for 2 weeks. And Ira Rennert would come for a week with his son and spend time with us, coming to the Shurim, going back maybe 25 years ago. And one day he says to me, he says, how would you like to go down to the Negev? And I'm going to go to the Negev with a helicopter. And this helicopter is the equivalent of, they called it limo-copter, like a limousine copter. And we have a guide, a desert guide, and we're going to land in the desert, then go further, and we're going to end up, our destination is Eilat. We're going to end up in Eilat. And I'm going to go snorkeling with my son, and you'll go have a desert guide, you go into the desert, so on and so forth. The company of this limousine copter, the one who started this was the first helicopter they had outfitted like a limousine, very 5-star accommodation, VIP type of accommodation. What he did before this, he was a kibbutz person, a kibbutznik, and he used to dust crops with chemicals. He used to fly this kind of plane dusting crops. Now he's becoming an entrepreneur. He's starting this company, Limocopter. So on the way back from Eilat, we had to go through passport control. Because when the helicopter landed, we needed to go through passport control. And we're sitting there, it was like a little hut, basically, this passport control. And this pilot wants to pick Ira Renner's brain of how to succeed in his business. And he says to Ira Rennert, he says, I just started this business. Maybe give me some pointers how I could really succeed in this business. So Ira Rennert says to him, he says, and he knows who Ira Rennert is, that he's a very wealthy man, successful businessman. So Ira Rennert says to him, he says, you see this rabbi here? He has a product that you can't even put $1 on that product. That's how precious that product is. And if you don't know how to market it, if you have the best product, you don't know how to market it, it has no value. But if you know how to market it, and it has that special value, then you could really do a lot with that product. So the key is to know how to market your product. So if you have a good product, and the rabbi, he has a product, he knows how to market it, that's why he's so successful. So this person is a secular kibbutznik, secular. So he says to Mr. Rennert, what kind of product does the rabbi have that he's marketing? He says it's called Torah. That's the product. If you know how to market it, then you go places with it. You understand? Because Ira Rennert is giving credibility to Torah. Maybe this man now has an interest, but what is it? What is it all about that this man who's so wealthy, he values Torah? What is it all about? That gives credibility to the product. So sometimes you have to bring in certain people who are valued for other reasons, unrelated to religion. If they give credence and credibility to something, all of a sudden, people take notice. I always point out, you find that the patriarchs were phenomenally wealthy. Avram was one of the wealthiest people in the world. He had world renown. He was a warrior. He defeated 4 kings. He had wealth when he left Egypt. He had flocks and herds and servants and money and gold, everything. Yitzchak, the same thing. And Yaakov had tremendous wealth. Such holy people, what do they need so much wealth for? Well, what do they need wealth? They had small families. Even for a iota of that would have been enough. You know what the answer is? These people have to impress the world. They're introducing monotheism to the world. If they have that kind of wealth, they gain people's respect. If they have that level of success on the battlefield, in the financial arena, wherever it is, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. You got it? That's the way it is. When Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, because of their persona in the world stage, wealth, success. So when they say, by the way, there's a God. So maybe that success is connected to that God. All of a sudden you have people interested in listening. And especially if they'll have a relationship with you, these people. What would a person do for a relationship with these wealthy people? They'll do anything. They'll even listen. Because they feel if he's a smart man, it pays to listen. So therefore, a Jew has an obligation. If you see your brother, a fellow Jew, sinning, going in the wrong direction, you have an obligation to bring him back to the right path. And you speak to him slowly, softly, and explain to him, it's in your best interest to assume this or assume that or this or whatever it may be. Let's say a person's doing certain illegal activity, and you say to him, you want a friend, you know something? You may be making money now, but if you're caught just once, whatever you made, you're going to regret you ever got involved. It's not worth it. You're going to be actually forfeiting your life and your freedom for now. But if you look in the future, and the track record is everybody eventually gets caught. And if they want to catch you, they could put you in a cell and throw away the key. Your life is destroyed. You want to upend your life. There are ways to speak to people. If they're smart, they take your advice and they stop behaving themselves. If not, they continue going there and eventually they get caught and they regret they didn't take your advice when they should have taken your advice. That's what it's about. How many people, they want to be freelancers when they're younger and they don't get married and they travel and they have girlfriends and they have this and that, whatever they have, and they're living the good life. All of a sudden, they come to a dead end at 50, 60 years old. They have no wife. They have no children. What do they have to show for their lives? If everything's said and done. Nobody could care less about them. The moment they lose their wealth, it's like they never existed. The moment they're no longer attractive, nobody's interested in them. At best, they're a bump on a log. Or they said they're a stick in the mud. That's it. So if the person thinks back, if I would have only been smart and settled down and find a wife who had good values and raised a family and maximized on my opportunity and lived responsibly, I'd be in a different place today. But if you wake up at the age of 55 or 60, something, you missed the boat, so to say, pretty much. Unless you assume some other level of constructive, beneficial type of involvement. You become involved in charities. You advise people, you help people. But on a personal level, the man believed what he's doing, it's fun, it's exciting, it's not restrictive, it's not burdensome. But what did you give away for that? Those moments of freedom. You gave away your life. What do you have to show for your life? Many years ago, people used to ask me, are you Orthodox? Are you conservative? Are you Reconstructionist? Are you Reform? What are you? What do you teach? I said, I teach Sinai Judaism. The moment you put a label on it, that's not me. You're from a different camp. I'm not part of that camp. When you say you teach Sinai Judaism, say, what is that? You come and listen. You'll hear what Sinai Judaism is. It has nothing to do with any identification. If you're a Jew, you have relevance to Sinai Judaism. Regardless what kind of label you have, what kind of hat you wear. Green, blue, black, whatever it is, doesn't make a difference. So you have to, even the vernacular, the terminology you use, you have to use words or classifications which don't immediately make the person feel he's not part of it. He's from a different camp. You don't want that. You know, it's interesting. We find that before we went into Canaan, into the promised land, Jews were not responsible for everyone. If one Jew sinned and the other Jew had the ability to intervene to prevent it, he wasn't held accountable. But when we went to Eretz Yisrael and they began conquering, there was a covenant which we made that every Jew is responsible for every other Jew. If you have the ability to make a difference, to intervene, to stop a person from sinning, and you don't, you're held accountable for that sin. Why? Now, normally you'd say, mind your own business. Why meddle in the other person's life? He wants to do the wrong thing, let him do the wrong thing. But if you're going to be held accountable for allowing him to do the wrong thing, you're going to intervene because you don't want to be a victim of the other person's misbehavior. So therefore, you can do whatever you can to explain to him, to convince him why it's wrong. Otherwise, say, look, I have to be concerned about myself. Let him be concerned about himself. But if God puts a hook over here, if you could have made a difference, you didn't make a difference, you're held accountable, you can do whatever you can to make a difference. That the person should not cross that line. That's the way it is.